and welcome to QC's event webinar this evening. My name is Alyssa Perna, and I am a corporate event tutor with QC, and I'm so happy to have you here this evening. Tonight, we're going to learn about how to succeed in your first year as an event planner. So I'm not going to beat around the bush. We're going to get started right now. So welcome in, and I'm really excited to be here with you tonight. So I'm going to just give you a brief overview of what I'm going to cover tonight to make sure that you understand what we're going to talk about. And of course, at the end of this, I'm going to answer some key questions that you may have. And I'm really excited to start. So let's go over the agenda tonight. So again, this webinar is going to talk about how to succeed in your first year as an event planner. Tonight, I'm really going to place focus on how to write a killer resume. So a resume that's going to capture somebody's attention and get them to want to learn more about you and hopefully bring you in for an interview. Then we'll talk about how to craft a really compelling cover letter, something that can also draw somebody in and make them want to talk to you a little bit more and hopefully hire you. We'll talk briefly about how to apply for jobs and make sure you're filling out an application thoroughly with all the right information. Then we'll talk about how to prepare for an interview. This is really important. If you can get through that resume, cover letter, and phone screen with the HR person, you need to be prepared for an interview. Kill it and get the job. And then last but not least, hopefully you get the job offer, right? So before we get started, I do want to tell you about a special promotion that QC is running tonight. So if you enroll in one of QC's foundation courses, so that's either their event and wedding planning course or their corporate event planning course, you will receive your choice of an advanced course or specialization course for free. So that could be the event decor course, luxury events, destination weddings. They have a festivals and live events course. And they also have a really cool one that's Accelerate Your Business Workshop if you are starting your business or have a business and are ready to kind of get it going and take it to the next level. And on top of this, any additional courses, they're offering 50% off if you sign up. So it's a really good deal, and just wanted to mention that before we get started. So let's dive into why you're all logged in and listening to this webinar, which is to talk about how to succeed in your when you're starting out your career in event planning. I want to talk first about your resume. So I'm a hiring manager. That means I have staff that reports to me. And that means sometimes I have open job opportunities. And I do see a lot of resumes and a lot of job applications come through. So what I want to talk about is what, at least for me, has really caught my eye or stuck out to make me want to learn more about a person and probably phone screen them and potentially bring them in for an interview and beyond, maybe even hire them, right? So we're going to start with the resume objective or the summary of qualifications. So what is a resume objective? A resume objective, it states your career goals, and it can be as simple as stating your desired job title, or it can kind of show where you have been and where you want to be in your career. Now, some people, so there is some argument out there that a resume objective isn't necessary anymore. So it doesn't have to be multiple sentences or a paragraph about yourself. I kind of have my own version of an objective on my resume. For example, my resume says as a header right underneath my contact information, energized event industry leader with over a decade of experience. The kind of is all-encompassing, straight and to the point. It shows that I'm a little bit more seasoned and have more experience. So hopefully it'll further reflect into the job that I might be applying for example. So the one thing that you want to do if you do have an objective on your resume is make sure that it is clear, concise, and that it's customized specifically to reflect the job that you're applying for. So some tips for you, you want to make sure that it's not too vague or too generic. You want to focus on specific relevant skills and accomplishments and tailor your resume objective basically based off of the opportunity that you're applying for. You want to be able to demonstrate through this what you can do for the company, and you want to keep it short, concise, and compelling and eye-catching. So I'm going to give you a bad example and then a better example. So here is a not so great or compelling resume objective. I want to coordinate events where I can apply my knowledge to a dynamic organization. So this is why it's not really compelling to me, because anybody applying for that position also probably wants to coordinate events where they can apply their knowledge to a dynamic organization, right? So what is really special about that? What is going to make that stand out to me and make you stand out as unique? So I'm going to give you a better example of a resume objective. So I want to work for QC Event School, planning educational conferences while utilizing my extensive skills in contract negotiation, logistics, people coordination, and budgeting. So what I've done there is we've gone back and said, I want to work for this specific company. Here's what I'm going to do for you. And here are all the skills and attributes that I'm going to bring to the table that sets me apart from anybody else applying for this job. So that's touching on your resume objective. The next thing is when you're showcasing your job history, you want to make sure that your skills and experience are clear and you give measurable examples. So just listing out your job duties isn't enough. For example, you don't want to understate your abilities, right? I'm going to give you some examples of understating your abilities. So I coordinated logistics for 10 events annually. Or I'm an experienced team leader and I trained new hires. That sounds good, but it isn't really very specific. It tells me a little bit, but I don't know how successful you were, and it's not really specific at all. So let's go back to those, and I'm going to give you a revised version. So again, we're going to take those two examples and get really specific with clear, measurable targets listed. The first not so great example was I coordinated logistics for 10 events annually. So instead, maybe I would say something like, I planned and executed event logistics from coordination to event design and strategy, creative theme development, vendor management, and post-event metrics, and exceeded the expectations of 95% of my customers. So that is a lot more in depth. It gives me a story about my skills and what I can bring to the table and how I can help this company that I'm applying for through the great things that I've done at my last job, for example. So let's go to that second point, which was I'm an experienced team leader and I trained new hires. Okay, that's cool. Let's say it a little bit better. So for example, I would maybe restate that by saying, I'm responsible for managing a diverse staff and all vendors, including but not limited to production companies, caterers, event staff, volunteers, and interns. So I'm displaying all the different types of people and groups, the diverse groups that I've managed, and how I've managed them through the events, really. Next on your resume, we should definitely touch on education and training. So maybe a lot of you probably listening might not have a ton of experience yet. And if you don't, that's okay, because you can demonstrate your skills and abilities through the education and training that you list on your resume. So the first thing you'll want to do if you're listing educational things are to list your highest level of education first. And beyond that, depending on the job you're applying for, you want to list that customized training, certifications, or completed coursework that is relevant for that particular opportunity. And then beyond that, you want to make sure, I know it's a lot of work, but you really should be customizing your resume for that particular job that you want. So let's say you want an event coordinator position. You need to make sure you have that customized resume that reflects all the skills needed for that job description to become an event coordinator. Or let's say you also have an interest in maybe doing some event catering kind of work. You should have a totally different resume for that kind of application that's very specific and reflective of a job opportunity in event catering. And I would even go a step further than that and tweak my resume objective for that very specific job that I'm applying for example. Now, here are some of the things that have really caught my eye when I have seen resumes pop through. Number one is it aesthetically appealing, or does it really like catch my eye? There's a lot of ways that a resume might catch my eye. One way, first and foremost has been colors and the layout of a resume. So if somebody maybe has a little bit of graphic design experience or knows how to make something look really good, to me, it catches my eye, it shows creativity, and if they have a cool or creative layout or a new and modern way that they've created their resume, or maybe they even have a catchy objective or opening statement on their resume, those things have caught my eye and caused me to spend some more time screening that resume in particular. Then also make sure that the format of your resume is professional and easy to read. You don't want stuff all over the place. Get straight to the point there. And then for a resume, you should really keep it to one page, 1 to maybe 2 pages max if necessary. But I have quite a bit of years of experience at this point, and I still have everything I need on 1 page when I'm applying for a position. And of course, you want to check that resume for proper spelling, grammar, and of course, include your contact information, because you never know who that resume might get passed on to within an organization. So make sure that your contact information is right there. That way, if it gets passed along, they'll be able to call you, email you, and get in touch with you, whoever it gets passed through, right? So I hope that helps. That's all about resumes. And a great thing to do is I Google resumes if I'm maybe thinking about redesigning the look of my resume or trying to modernize it or get ideas. So Google resumes, go Google good resumes and bad resumes. Pull them up and look at them. See what catches your eye. If you were hiring somebody, what would make you look or want to learn more about them, right? So the next thing I want to touch on is how to write a compelling cover letter. So a compelling cover letter needs to grab the reader's attention or the hiring manager's attention. And you can do that by writing a really compelling introduction. What you want to do in the first sentence or two is really hook the hiring manager, hook the person reading the cover letter to go, I want to learn a little bit more, not just the simple, like, I want to become a coordinator for this job because I have 3 years of experience. Okay, everybody might be writing that. So how can you write something a little bit different that might make you stand out? So for example, I've written one here for the sake of this webinar as like an intro to a job, a hypothetical job I would be applying for. So as a lifelong fan of the Cleveland Indians baseball team, I was thrilled to find the opportunity for the senior director of events with over a decade of experience in event leadership roles while doubling the private events revenue over a 3-year period in my current position. I can help you exceed goals as I continue to expand my skill set. So that's a bit more compelling. If I'm applying for a job with the Cleveland Indians, I've been a lifelong fan. I'd love to work for you. I'm passionate about your organization. That's what I showed through that intro sentence. And here is what I can do for you. I did this at my last opportunity, and here's the potential that I have and what I can produce for you, right? So a couple other tips on a cover letter. If you know who the hiring manager is, and you might be able to do a little digging, do a little LinkedIn research, if you know who the hiring manager is, address them specifically in the letter. Address the letter to them. And then throughout your cover letter, you want to address the company's biggest needs and facts about how you can help them, and also what do you like about the company. That shows that you really spent the time getting to know the company, something cool about them, and why you really want to work for that company. That's important. Fitting into a company culture is very important as well. You'll also want to show your past work experience and make sure that it meets the need of the position that you're applying for with very specific examples and scenarios. You want to make sure that your cover letter has skimmable content. So by that I mean you don't have a 3-page long cover letter and goes on and on and on. It's kind of short, to the point, short paragraphs. It's brief, yet it's compelling. That might take a lot of work, but as my old professor used to say from college, every word is precious, okay? So, and that's the same is true for your resume and your cover letter. And also make sure that your cover letter is written in business letter format with all the proper dressings. So by dressings, I mean that go Google business letter formats. Look at how they're written. It's very specific. You have your address blocks, you have a date, there's a specific amount of spacing between your address block and the dear so-and-so. There's specific spacing at the signature area. So make sure that shows how professional you are as well. So now we're going to move away from your resume and your cover letter, and we're going to talk a little bit about building a job application and applying online. So I'm going to keep this simple for you. Back in the day, I know my mom used to say that she could just walk into, if she wanted a job at a bank, she could walk into the bank, bring her resume, bring her nice smile, and ask for a specific person or whoever's in charge of hiring, and maybe have the opportunity to meet them face-to-face and kind of sell herself right there on the spot and hand in her resume for that particular job. But unfortunately, due to technology, depending on how you look at it, doesn't really work that way anymore. So how can you stand out these days? And a good way to do it is to make sure you build your job application online as thoroughly as possible. So I'm going to keep it simple. When you're applying for a job online, make sure you fill out all the fields that it's asking you for. If a cover letter is optional, I've seen that quite a few times, you should still write a cover letter with just as much effort and thought and care as you would if it were required, okay? You want to, of course, always check for spelling and grammar. Don't just in and not check everything that you've written, because that will reflect, errors will reflect in what the person reviewing the application sees. And then you always want to supply examples of work whenever possible. So whether you can add links to a website or maybe you attach some photos to your cover letter of events you worked on or helped produce or design, show examples of work when possible. Now let's talk about how to prepare for the interview. So you have a great resume, you have a great cover letter, you put your job application in, oh my gosh, you get contacted. It could be a phone call. Usually it's an email from somebody in the HR department, human resources department, and they'll ask you for your availability to hop on the phone for a phone screen. And what that person's going to do is be kind of the preliminary checker before they pass you on to the hiring manager, potentially, or somebody else on the team, not even the hiring manager yet. But they're going to kind of pre-check you and make sure that you speak well on the phone, you're compelling, you do have the right amount of experience. And once that pre-screen is done, it usually takes you to that next step for kind of the more in-depth, real hardcore interviews in most situations. This is how to prepare for an interview. Number one, research. Research the organization. So use LinkedIn, use Indeed, go to their website, go to glassdoor.com, find out a little bit more about the company, the organization, about the team, about leadership, about maybe some challenges, common themes you find out about the company, and try to understand, if you can, what you might be doing in that position day to day. So research the company and learn about them. Try to figure out more about the position through the research you're doing. Number two, practice. So practice interview questions if you can with a friend, or practice with your spouse, or in the mirror by yourself. So one thing that I always do to prepare for an interview, an in-person or sometimes even a phone screen, is I'll Google difficult interview questions. And I practice the difficult interview questions. And I answer the difficult questions that don't have obvious answers. So you always want to make sure you do answer honestly. So for example, one of these tougher questions I've seen asked in interviews is, if I were to ask your current manager that something that you need to improve on, what would they tell me? So kind of the standard go-to answer that most people give is they're giving an answer that they think the hiring manager wants to hear. So for example, I take on too much work and I tend to overdo it because I'm so driven and I take on so much work. So it's kind of like a positive because you do so much work, but you need to like work on balancing that. So of course that's something to improve. I really do personally need to improve on that myself, but answer honestly. So for me in my position now, I might say, I really need to work on my Microsoft Excel skills. I need to learn how to build better formulas and calculate things to better run the events department and this business. So I'm being honest, and these are critical skills that I need to develop. So everybody has things they need to work on, no matter your age or your skill set. You have things you need to work on and things you need to develop. So it's okay to recognize that stuff and just be honest about it. The next thing you need to do is prepare for your interview. So make sure that you prepare questions about the position and the company, because at some point during the interview process, they're going to go to you and say, okay, what questions do you have for me? The worst thing you can do is say, I don't have any questions. It doesn't really show that you're engaged in the company, that you want to learn more. You really should have some questions too after having a conversation with the hiring manager. So make sure you prepare some questions ahead of time if you really don't have any about the role, the position, what the team's like, so you are more engaged in what they're doing, right? Make sure that you convey your event planning courses that you're taking, if you're doing them with QC, as part of your experience as well. You can provide really specific examples about what you've learned and how you've outlined event plans in your assignments and more. The other thing you'll want to do is prepare real-life scenarios that demonstrate skills needed for that specific job. So you should focus really on problem solving, how you solved a problem in the past. Communication, maybe there was a lapse in communication and you went back and resolved it and got the team on the right page, or you put a process together to help resolve a point of conflict that kept upsetting everybody because there was really no policy or procedure around it. Show that you're organized and that you have those coordination skills through really clear examples. And if you don't have the experience planning an event yet, use other scenarios in your life where you've planned and executed a project for other jobs, or maybe working in a group, or even working with your family on something. So there's all sorts of creative ways you can showcase your skills and experience in that realm. Now, the interview really, I think if it's going well, a sure sign of an interview going well is if it turns into more of a conversation. So it's more kind of like, okay, yeah, I get that, and here's what I can do for you, and oh, I've been there before. So the best interviews seem to be more focused around a conversation. And in order to be prepared, you should always come for your in-person interviews with copies of your resume, a portfolio with work examples, if you have photos to show or a website to show. Awesome. That's the proof is in the pudding, as they say, right? And then when you go on site for that interview, take a deep breath and have confidence in your skills and your abilities. Be authentic, be who you are, and go get yourself that job. One last tip that I want to mention to you all is I personally think it's super important to write a thank you letter. I used to write a handwritten thank you letter after every job interview. I've kind of shifted that over the years with technology and emails and all that fun stuff to, especially if it's like a virtual position or something, I will at least write a thank you via email. You should always write a thank you, and a customized email, not just like a thank you for talking to me about this job. I'm really interested in it. Give some clear examples about like what excited you about the position, why you want to work for that company, and ask about next steps. At the end of an interview, the other last thing you can do, I always ask the question, do you have any hesitation about my skills and abilities to do this role or to go into this position? And I love when I get critical, honest answers, because even if I don't get the job, it's going to help me grow and critique and work on some things and know where I can maybe invest some time to get those skills and be better for the next interview or next opportunity, right? And I always ask, what are the next steps in the interview process? Because you can kind of gauge from there. They might say, you know, so you're not waiting around every day thinking about this job, obsessing about this job. They might say, you know, we have just started interviewing. We need probably like 3 or 4 more weeks to get through this first round. And if we're going to move on with you, then you'll hear from us then. Or maybe we're moving really quickly. We're going to make our decision by next Thursday. Okay, so it gives you a sense, and if you get that like really, really vague answer about like, thanks for coming in and you'll hear from us if we're interested, it might not be the best sign, but you still might hear from them. So just kind of depends on the personality that you're interviewing with, okay? So that's all I've got for you tonight. So I just want to go over an overview of what we talked about. So we talked about tips on how to write an eye-catching resume. We talked about how to craft a very compelling cover letter. We touched on how thoroughly you should be applying for jobs online. And we talked about how to be prepared for the interview so you can go and get yourself that job. Before we dive into questions, I wanted to just give you a reminder that QC is running that promotion I mentioned earlier. So if you enroll in one of QC's foundation courses, so either their corporate event planning course, which I tutor, so if you sign up for that, you might get me as your tutor, or you could sign up for their event and wedding course, they're going to give you a free advanced specialization course. So you could take the Destinations Wedding course or Festivals and Live Events course, for example. And on top of this, if you sign up for more courses, they're going to give you 50% off of those courses. So it's a great promotion if you're interested in using QC to further your education or get into the event planning industry. So without further ado, quite honestly, if you're watching this, I have not looked at any of the comment feeds yet. So let me pull that up now, and I'm going to dive into some of the questions that you guys asked earlier today and answer those first, and then I'm going to go look at the comments and see what questions you all had and answer them to the best of my ability. So some of the questions collected earlier by QC, we had Devin or Devon, I'm sorry, I don't if I mispronounced it, but Devon asked, what is something that I wish I knew when I first began event planning? I guess I wish I would have known that, quite honestly, there's so many like opportunities within event planning or event coordination. I've at least been able to be really fulfilled through a career like this. And if I did get bored in my current job, I could go find another new, cool opportunity doing something different if I wanted to. And the great thing about event planning is you really can do something different every day or work on a new project, and you can grow in your career. So I moved from doing more logistics and selling venue space to a little bit more strategic stuff and a large scale event that I really own the nuts and bolts of and produced this really cool thing, and then moved on from there. And now I'm like more focused on strategy and running an events business, a corporate events kind of conferences business. And I've loved that I've been able to grow in my career in events. I haven't had to go, okay, all I'm doing is logistics all day. I'm gonna step away. So I wish I would have realized that, because I guess I didn't think about it too much when I was younger, but I'm glad that I've been able to shift my career to grow along with me. Michelle asked, how important are style shoots for a portfolio before you become an official event planner? That's a great question. So I will give you somebody might disagree with me, but I'm going to give you my honest personal answer, which is I think it's important, but it's not essential, honestly. So I did not probably have photos or formal photos of any work that I had done when I started my career in events, but there's some ways I'm going to suggest you might be able to go out and start creating style shoots or get some photos under your portfolio. So you can maybe consider partnering with a local photographer who's trying to get the word out about their business and ask them to come photograph some events or a styled shoot that you put together. Or you could even offer pro bono services and coordinate a wedding as a trade, and then ask the bride and groom that you'll be able to use their photos as like a stylized shoot example. So there's ways you can do it and kind of volunteer your time and your efforts and your event planning skills to someone to build those sort of portfolio shoots you might need to get started. So I hope that helps a little bit. And like I said, it's important, but it's not essential. So even if you planned a portion of an event, and maybe it was a big, large-scale gala for a nonprofit organization, then you could still get photos from that and just say, here's the part that I worked on and I had a hand in helping to develop and create, right? So Ravenna asked, how did I get my first client? And if I already had a portfolio, what would I recommend to those who don't have a portfolio to show? So again, I'll go back to my last answer. I think if you volunteer to lead something like for a local nonprofit, maybe you help them design or plan their annual fundraising gala, maybe you do all the centerpieces, or you offer to do their hour reception before the formal dinner, that could help you build those sort of shoots, or that will help you build your portfolio really, and your experience, right, to put on your resume. And a stylized shoot is a good option for that. So Marcia asked, what is the difference between being an event planner and an event designer? And then which one do I recommend and why? So first, maybe I'll just define the difference between an event planner and an event designer. So an event planner is a professional who handles the logistics of an event. So they might handle finding a location to making sure that the vendors are paid. They might take the client's goals and create the budget, the event requirements. They'll come up with the logistical ideas, and they kind of put all the pieces together to develop and plan for the event. So for example, some things you might be doing if you're an event planner is meeting with clients to discuss the event and the plan for the event. You might find and secure the venue. You might take bids from vendors, select the vendors, coordinate the vendors such as caterers, florists, entertainers, secure transportation. So handling logistical things to make it run smoothly, right? No hiccups. Whereas an event designer in a more formal sense, they're responsible for creating a theme, a tone, a look, a feel, a mood, or the atmosphere of an event. So for example, you might be coordinating elements with other elements to create a look and a feel for an event. So maybe you might be meeting with clients to get ideas for the design and the look of it. You'll develop an image and the atmosphere for the event, and you'll be selecting specific elements to match the desired image. Maybe it's special food, colors, decorations, linen, entertainment that fits in with that theme and design, etc. So in event planning, you might not do either or. You kind of might have a hybrid of both aspects. Like I have a little bit of both in my current job, but certainly there is a difference. And I say I don't necessarily think one's better than the other. Quite honestly, how I would decide if I were you would be, what are you actually really good at? Where do you personally excel? So for me, the design and the look and the feel, I might have something in my head, but that's not my thing. I have friends who can like go to the store and pick out an outfit and they look amazing and it matches perfectly and they look so stylish. I need all the help I can get when I go shopping. So I don't have that like design mind where I can just envision it and then put the little pieces and parts together to make something incredibly beautiful and compelling to the eye. My talents, I think, lie more in organizing logistics and handling budgets and coordinating things, making them run smoothly, managing a lot of pieces and parts. So my talent lies more in logistics. So I think it just depends on you. Some people are so talented at design, and if you're good at it, you should focus on that, and vice versa for logistics. Adriana asked, how to advertise to get your first client when you don't have a portfolio or any job experience other than doing events for family members? Good question. So I would recommend that you convey your event planning course materials or coursework that you've completed as part of your experience, because maybe you haven't had that break yet to have that first real job experience. But if you've taken really specific coursework, you're qualified and you have the training in order to get in and get the job done. So you can also prepare some of those real life scenarios that demonstrate the skills you need to be successful in the job. So just focus on how you can solve problems, how you can proactively communicate with the team, show you're organized and that you can coordinate things. And if you don't have that event planning experience, just use the scenarios where you maybe planned and executed a project from another job. So maybe you work at a restaurant right now and you wait tables, and you one time waited like 10 tables at once and you were successful and made everybody happy and there were no complaints, and you can prove that you worked really hard and can handle a lot at once. So I waited tables at restaurants for like 8 years, and I learned a lot through that. So I applied those skills and those things that I learned through those experiences as I grew with my career. So I hope that helps. Tracy asked, how can I connect with more event planners so I can help them with their events as a freelance event coordinator, probably to build your resume, your portfolio, right? So currently, she only working with 1 to 2 event planners with day of coordination. So my recommendation would be reach out, put yourself out there. Reach out to people that you might want to work with, or companies you might want to work with, or planners you might want to work with on LinkedIn, on Facebook, email them, send them your resume and your letter of interest. So those are all key ways. I always live by the theme of ask, because what's the worst they can say? No. It might take a little while and a lot of effort to get some people to respond to you, or they might not have a project for you right away, but at least you're showing the initiative that you want to work with somebody to plan those kind of events. So awesome. I am going to scroll here now and look at the questions you guys might have asked on here. And hi, everybody. I'm probably like a half hour late with saying hi back to you guys, but thank you for joining tonight. So let's see if there are any more questions. Thank you, Lisa, for the awesome objective comment. Let's see. So what are my thoughts around unpaid apprenticeships? Devin or Devon asked. Really, really good question. I will go back to my college days and tell you that I did some unpaid internships or apprenticeships, really. So let's see, one of them, it was not paid hourly. It was a very small stipend. I would go in and do like 28 hours of work a week, and they would give me a couple $100 at the end of the month as a stipend for the work. And I loved it because it was a little extra cash that I otherwise didn't have access to, right? And I did work and get paid like hourly for another internship. And then the third internship that I had was completely unpaid. So it was for a big hospital system in Cleveland. And I worked on their women's health events and their women's health conferences. And the hospital was a nonprofit. They couldn't pay. And that was fine because I wanted the experience. And I think you kind of need to bite the bullet and do it, to be honest with you, in order to get the experience under your belt. And you never know what that could lead to. It could lead to a full-time job. It could lead to a career. And by career, I mean a long-term job where you're advancing within a specific organization. So I hope that helps a little bit. So Marcia, you're so welcome. So let's see what else we have. How do you price an event fairly? That is a good question. And let me be honest with you here, because I don't run my own personal business. Maybe, if you're still on, if you want to answer that, if you're there, I don't own my own business, so I can't give you advice on how to price that out. But usually some event planners might do a markup on their services. So maybe they're charging a flat rate fee to secure working with them. And then they might say, like, anything that I'm coordinating for you, it's going to be marked up 20% because of, the coordination and things I'm doing to put this thing together for you. And some of the planners might also do an hourly rate or a mix of all three. So by hourly rate, maybe you might want to start small if you don't have that much experience, and as your portfolio and your careers grow, you might be able to offer charge a higher hourly rate. So Denise, I'm glad to hear that you're loving the school. QC event school courses are really truly quality courses with great content, and I know a lot of students feel that way just based off of the reviews on Facebook. So I don't see any more questions. So last call for questions before we wrap this webinar up. I love doing these. I love giving advice. I hope that it has helped you guys and giving you some tips and different ways to think about applying for jobs. And if there's anything you need, don't hesitate to reach out to QC Event School. You can continue commenting on the feed if you are watching this like 3 weeks from today, and QC or myself will get back to you and would be happy to answer any other questions you might have. So thanks to everyone who tuned in. I hope you learned a lot, and I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Have a great night, guys. Bye-bye.